Hi there, friends. This is Dr. Tom Knotts, and I want to talk today on the subject of Christianity and hypnosis, but I'm also going to touch upon the Kundalini, the third eye, demonic interfacing, and things like that. Um, a little bit of a background is for me. I've got literally 38 years of education beyond high school. I went to college, many different colleges. And I've continued learning my whole life. I do have a doctorate in psychology, four masters, considered to be a doctorate in theology, and I've got the equivalent of a doctorate in hypnotherapy. I went to an accredited hypnosis school. It's the best and the only accredited one in the United States, but it's the best in the world. At that time, it was the only accredited one here. My background also, and so I can speak on the Kundalini and such, is I've been in martial arts since about the age of 2, over 50 years now. And I was just trained to be a Shaolin priest before I ever became a Christian. I studied under Master Tay and Davis Maglan from the Geneva Temple. And so I do understand. I've trained in yoga by a yogi when I was in the 6th grade. And I trained under him in Ashtalanga, Sun Yat systems, and various other systems of yoga. So I have a bit of knowledge on these subjects. So today I want to go through a list of questions that were given to me by a friend, and I'm going to address them because I believe that it's probably on many people's minds. If it's bothering one person, it's probably went across the concepts, probably entered other people's minds. The first question is hypnosis a sin? And does it have occultic roots? I will address the questions in order. Hypnosis itself is not a sin. And no, it does not have its roots in the occult. Now, people that don't understand hypnosis, and you wouldn't believe the comments I get. I have filters so that most people can't see them because some are just downright nasty and filthy. But anything can be occultic. For instance, overeating can bring in a demonic stronghold. Looking at the wrong thing can bring in a demonic stronghold. Lusting, for your neighbor's things, for somebody else's stuff can bring in demonic things. Anything can become demonic. The Bible says anything not done with a commitment to God in faith, i.e. a commitment to God, is a sin. So hypnosis itself is not a sin because you can be committed to God and have hypnotherapy. Does it have its roots in the occult? No, it doesn't. Hypnosis is actually a science of the mind. And people that criticize it do not understand how the mind works. At the 4th layer of the brain, you have the value and the belief systems. Now they're tied into the base root at the 6th level, just above the brain stem where the oasis is. And it's tied in there. And if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, you'll understand there are certain tenets that have to be developed in order to create an identity and a psyche. That psyche is actuated around the ages of 6 to 8, primarily right around the age of 7. And that's when you have your identity. Now, what happens is you have belief and value systems that create filters at the 4th layer of the brain. Everything's filtered through them. The unconscious mind, some people will say is 88%. Some will say it's 82%. I believe it's about 84%. That makes up the most of the mind. So your decision making, your way you respond, the things you believe to be true or not true, are all located there. And so the conscious mind, being the two lobes, the first layer and the second layer, which is the conscious, active conscious, and the subconscious, make up only 12 to 16% of the person's mind. So what happens is people will have situations that they believe or that they want to change. They'll have addictions that they want to get rid of, but they're unable to. And it's because the unconscious part of the mind finds the things that it knows already to be positive. In other words, The things it does not know, the brain finds too insulting. It doesn't like to learn new experiences. It doesn't like to learn new things. It is set in its ways by the age of 8. A person learns in the first year of life, post vitro or after you're born, your brain learns 50% of everything it's going to learn. Well, that baby may look like nothing's happening, but he's just looking around and goo-gooing and smiling. But actually, his eyes are recording, his ears are recording, his sensory glands are all recording everything around it. And it's being put into a huge data bank. And so what happens is everything you learn in life, 50% is in the first year. Then you have 25% the second year. So by the age of 2, 75% of what you know is in there. You'll say, well, a child doesn't know history, a child doesn't know mathematics. Well, it's called the degree of halves. So every year you learn half as much. The other stuff is not experiential. The other stuff, like reading a textbook or comic books that you memorize, that is what we call data. It's not what we'd call part of the psyche. The psyche is developed and has its belief and value systems permanently created by the age of 6. It's actuated at the age of 7. It becomes lived out by the age of 9, where the person begins expressing themselves independent of others. So people that do not understand hypnosis and how it works will often, accuse it of being demonic or of the devil. But true hypnotherapy is not. There are 2 primary schools of hypnosis and in the world today. There are many types of hypnosis, but there's 2 primary schools or methods. When you hypnotize somebody, you do not put them there are 8 delta states in degrees. You don't put them into that delta state of deep sleep. You put them in a state so that the frontal lobes actually travel with you around the value systems, and they activate and then infiltrate the unconscious mind. And what happens is you'll have a set of positives and negatives. And so you introduce new thought and you challenge the negatives and you try to enforce and build up the positives. And what happens is over time you get more of the positive, like it's better to not smoke, you save money. Your teeth don't turn yellow. You don't smell. You don't have to search for an ashtray. All these things become positives, and the desire to smoke becomes less and less. So what you're doing is you're building the positives to take away the negatives. You're trying to create what we'd call uncognitive behavioral change. Now, people that don't understand how that works will say it's demonic. I've had people tell me that they've had to deliver people from hypnosis and such. Well, there's a difference between stage therapy, mind control programming, and hypnotherapy. In mind control programming, the person's not conscious. They put them all the way into a deep layered delta state. They take over what's called the control center or the brain box, it's often referred to, and they condition and program in responses against the person's will is not even there. They break the will and go around it. In stage therapy, the first I was describing is mind control programming. In stage therapy, what they do is they drive a person through fear and anxiety straight into a delta state. In order to escape the tension around them, the brain will hide like a turtle going into its shell, and then it'll simply respond to whatever suggestions it is given. That is not hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy is where the person willingly, because by the way, in hypnotherapy, a person will not do anything it does not want to do. Only when you drive them into a delta state can you make them do things that they would not normally do. And you can. Like you can take and change something, like you can turn a banana into something else. You can take I seen a person once who had been trained to eat poop. The person thought it was funny because they had conditioned them through suggestive delta training, put them into a state of deep fear and drove the brain down to where they thought it was candy. and they actually thought it tasted like candy. They thought it smelled like candy. They didn't realize when I walked up and I seen that, it outraged me. I reversed it and took it out of the person. So hypnotherapy is where you keep them conscious and you're doing something that they want to do to go in and change a bad behavior or to build something that's missing. So is hypnosis a sin? No. Anything you're doing to try to make you into a better person is positive and would be honoring God, because God wants us to be better people. He wants us to be kinder, more loving. He wants us to be prosperous. He wants us to try to succeed. We're supposed to do mightily with our hands, whatever we put our hand to. That means do the best that you can. Now, does it have occultic roots? No, it has roots in the scientific world. So I hope that answers the first question. The second is when you practice hypnosis, do you get a Kundalini awakening? Most people don't understand what Kundalini is. Being that I was a yogi and a Shaolin priest before I became a Christian, at that time I was a Buddhist and such. I became a Christian and I've wiped away a lot of my life. The Kundalini is what we call the primitive awakening of your spirit. And there are various centers within the body that control aspects of emotion, desire, various things. And there are 29 centers. Most people only know 7. So the Kundalini is when you awaken this primitive spirit, and it's found in the desires and lusts of the body. In other words, it's mostly the flesh being attached to the spirit. We're made up of a body, a soul, and a spirit. Now, the body wars against the spirit, and the soul makes the decisions. It's in the middle between the spirit. When you get saved and become a Christian, the Holy Spirit yokes himself to your spirit. That's the Holy of Holies. And it influences your soul, which is your heart. It tries to help you to decide to make right things. But your flesh will always want more. It'll always want its way. So it's an enemy against the spirit and against the things of God. So the desires and lusts of the body are attached to the spirit. This is why Kundalini is often very sexual in nature. It's of the baser instincts, the primitive things that the flesh desires. It is a form of idolatry because it worships the god of this world, and it seeks to appease the lust. It seeks to invite in spirits of this world, and there are demonic spirits that are fallen, and they're in every aspect of life, and it tries to invite them in. It tries to open the third eye, which basically becomes a portal for spirits to go in and out and to attach to your mind. Most people understand that awakening of the third eye is nothing more than like the all-seeing eye of Osiris. It's bringing in that head entity so that it can give you abilities that are unnatural. That is demonic. But true hypnotherapy doesn't do that. It shouldn't do anything like that. That Kundalini awakening is pure occultic. Now, the person mentioned that their therapist, the hypnosis therapist, asked her to roll their eyes up and keep looking at a stop, a point where it stops. Well, actually what happens is when you roll the eyes upward, you see when a person has an automatic response system, which you all do, when you try to remember something, it's uncommon. It's very common for a person to break eye contact with whoever they're talking to or to detach. And the reason is because the brain wants to focus upon remembering and making those connections. And so what it does is it'll momentarily break away. Well, what happens, though, is when you roll the eyes up and it breaks and detaches from all the perception around it, is it produces alpha waves. It causes an immense production of alpha waves. And what this does is the alpha waves will put you into a suggestible state. So what the hypnotherapist is trying to do is to get you, it's a quicker route past the value and belief systems into the unconscious. So they're trying to take you quickly down into the unconscious. I'm against having people roll their eyes in the back of their head, telling them to do it and clear their mind. They should never clear their mind. You have them put peace upon their mind and you bring them to peace, like Erickson hypnotherapy is where you tell them a story, or Milton, then you take them down. So as long as the individual is not inviting in or opening a door for anything to come in that's not of the occult, okay, you're not putting them into an unconscious delta state. That's what a stage hypnotist does. You're taking them willingly with their knowledge down to the bottom. So the deal is you're doing this with them. You're helping them on a journey. They're never out of control. Which brings us to the third question. What are the dangers of mindfulness for Christians? The person says a lot of Christians are now practicing yoga. I believe that is not good. Well, a lot of people are not familiar with what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is a term that means to purposely bring your attention of the present moment without evaluating anything. In other words, just like letting go of the steering wheel and saying, I want the car to drive itself. You'd never do that because you'd die. So through meditation or other training, Zen yogi, tantric arts, because I know of 6 different types of yoga that I've studied. For instance, the Sun Yat systems, where you bring in the inward smile, that's where you actually invite something in. I'm against that now, because you don't want to bring spirits into your body. So mindfulness is when a person, through meditation or other training, will seek to pull in things from outside of their body. That is something you should never do. You should never do that, because I'm going to tell you something. If you open the door and give permission or invite, the spirit will come in. Okay? So Christians should not do that. Should Christians practice yoga? I love yoga for flexibility, strength conditioning, and training. I have my L5S1. My disc has been blown out of my back and impacted into my nerve for over almost 30 years now. My right leg is bolted together with no ankle joint. My body has just been busted in so many places. I'm in pain. But I do yoga, simple yoga for flexibility and strength. I do not do the esoterics, which is where you take and open your mind and summon spirits in. That is demonic. Your body is a temple, and I got news for you. Unholy things want to get in. They will always appear to be good, but there's no good angel that'll enter into a person, okay? The difference, the person asks, what's the difference between mindfulness and hypnosis? In mindfulness, you empty yourself and you relinquish control. It opens the door for unholy spirits. Hypnosis is where you are joining with a hypnotherapist to go around the mind's defenses in order to access your unconscious mind and then influence it by putting new beliefs and strengthening the positive beliefs that are there and reducing the negative beliefs and giving the negative side a better value system. Okay? That brings us to the 5th question. Are subliminals sinful too, and do they come from hypnosis? Subliminal messaging is everywhere. Psychology has been in the advertisement business since the 40s. I mean, anytime you would drop propaganda in war, they would drop out hundreds of leaflets, or, they dropped out massive condoms on the Russian side addressed for the American troops. They knew that they would find it, read it, and they would think, man, they must be huge if these things actually fit. So they do things that are intentionally trying to change the way you believe and the way you think. For instance, in the Dick Van Dyke Show, many people thought, oh, that was one of the cleanest shows ever. But if you ever watch it in the introduction, you're going to see they had the buildings with the silhouettes. This is in the 60s. They say, oh, that was a clean show. They slept in separate beds, fully dressed in pajamas. No. Hollywood used that show to get into the American homes so it could then condition them so they begin accepting sexuality. In those windows of the silhouettes, you'll see naked women and naked men standing. And the silhouette, the conscious mind doesn't perceive it, but the unconscious does. And so television has been changing the way people believe and react for years. I remember back in the 70s when a lawsuit was filed because Kmart had started putting subliminal messaging in the background of all the music. They call it syncopation. And it's where you put in something else over or under the other one. The brain will pick it up. Subliminals aren't sinful, but they're wrong. And anytime somebody does something without your permission or without your agreement, it is wrong. In hypnotherapy, you don't do that. In hypnotherapy, you work out what the person wants to succeed. Like, I want to quit eating fattening foods and I want to lose weight. I want to exercise and be healthy. So you will design a therapy for them to reach that end result. You will feel it with positive things and then with negative things. I had a person I knew that would only come to one session. They wanted to quit smoking. And so basically, with their permission, I told them every time you put a cigarette to your lips and light it, you're going to feel the flame burn your lips. When you inhale, that's going to be like molten lava going down your throat. The way that person was mad. What the blank did you do to me? I said, why? I mean, I thought I was going to get beaten up by the boyfriend who was huge. I looked like a bodybuilder. And, every time I go to smoke, my throat burns. Well, guess what? They quit smoking. And I knew they wouldn't come back for the other 9 sessions. But they did it willingly because they did truly want to smoke, and they needed to for their health. Because sometimes people can have COPD and be dying, but they'll still light that cigarette up. They'll take their oxygen off, and you're saving their life. So that wasn't just a subliminal message. That was a programmed response mechanism that was put in through suggestive subliminal. Subliminals must be agreed upon. A good hypnotherapist will have your permission and do it with your agreement. I hope this helps you understand. Because, for instance, when somebody prays, they go into a suggestive state. It's called somnambulism when somebody's hypersuggestible. Many people will go into a suggestible state, and they do because they're just overridden with anxiety. And that's why when a person's got a lot of anxiety, stress, or worry, whatever somebody says to them will affect how they respond and feel. All right, this is Dr. Tom. I hope this answers your questions. Lord bless you. If you have more, please feel free to write me. My health is doing better this week, so I want to thank you for your prayers, and I'll continue to answer them as you send them. In Christ's name.